still a lot of pandemonium outside the airport.
Well, there is, but look, but no one's being killed right now. God forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but no one's being killed right now.
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the two, not one, but two suicide bombings that have rocked the Kabul airport over in Afghanistan. Now, I'm reporting this pretty early on. It's just happening. It's right around 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday, August 26, 2021. So this information will change. We'll see updates in the numbers, updates in the circumstances, updates in those who are involved, the terrorists or whoever. But I'm going to tell you what I know right now, and then we're going to get into the details of why this whole thing has happened, at least in my humble opinion. Now, here are the facts that we know so far. There have been two suicide bombings near the airport. And when I say near the airport, I'm talking about right at the gate to enter the airport. You know, the same gates that have been inundated with people. Hundreds, if not thousands, have been crowding these gates over the past few days, maybe even weeks, to try and escape after the Taliban took over when the U.S. left. So you got women, infants, you got everybody trying to leave. And of course, unfortunately, this made the airport a big target of terrorists. Why not? If you want to go hurt people, if you want to go attack, do whatever you want to do, send a message, maybe even hurt Americans, we'll get to that in a moment. The airport is a prime target because everybody is crowding right there. So the suicide bombing was unfortunately easy to carry out. What happened was, in at least one of the suicide bombings, a guy had a vest strapped to himself. He walked in the crowd and detonated his vest. And I believe the same thing happened at the other suicide bombing, because when I first heard about it, they said it was an explosion. They didn't know where the explosion came from, how it happened, why it happened. And then the obvious became revealed that it was a suicide bombing. Then they found the details out, and then another one happened. Unfortunately, right now, I think there are as many as 50 people that have been injured and or killed. And this includes Afghan citizens, the Taliban, and Americans. I don't know the exact number of Americans, but I'm seeing as many as 6 who have been injured and or killed. And I'm seeing a report of 3 Marines that were killed. But don't hold me to that because, like I said, this is very early on and we're still getting information. So this information will change. We're going to see numbers change. We're going to see circumstances change. We're going to see a lot of these things change. But this is what we know so far. Now, in my humble opinion, this was predictable, totally predictable. The exit from this country was like there was no plan. People want to try to blame Trump, talking about, oh, well, Trump said we're going to be out in May and there was no game plan to get out. Well, Trump had a game plan to get out. He did have a game plan, but the Biden administration scrapped his plan and they replaced that with their own plan. Now, I don't know what their plan was. There does not appear to be one. They're talking about, okay, we're not going to do May, which is already signed, sealed, and delivered with the Taliban. You know, you had Pompeo go to Afghanistan. They signed a deal, and it was done. We're going to leave in May, but they didn't do that. So they want to keep on going. It's like, okay, now you're not honoring your end of the deal. You're occupying our territory. So now we got some problems. So when the U.S. just left in the middle of the night without really telling anybody, without communicating with anybody, whether it be the Taliban or any allies that are in the region, any of the Afghan interpreters or whoever, it created a whole big mess. So the Taliban swoop in. Now we have carnage. I don't believe the Taliban are the ones who did the suicide bombing. I don't think so. Because the Taliban want to be a legitimate government. They don't really want to be necessarily like barbarians. I mean, they are to a certain extent with some of their tactics, but I'm not sure that suicide bombing just indiscriminately will be how they operate. They probably want to attack somebody for doing a particular thing, like not wearing the burqa. Now, I'm not saying that beheading somebody in the street or hanging them from not wearing the burqa is, something that you should be doing, obviously. You shouldn't be doing that. That's pretty barbaric, but you're doing that for a particular reason to a particular person. not just suicide bombing indiscriminately. What's happening is there's also ISIS in Afghanistan, not only the Taliban, but ISIS. You may hear them referred to, when I say them, I mean the mainstream media, you may hear them refer to this particular set of ISIS as ISIS-K. That does not mean ISIS Kabul. There's a different region in Afghanistan that starts with a K. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but you guys know, let me know in the comments. But ISIS-K is in the power struggle with the Taliban to take over Afghanistan. You understand what I'm saying? So that is probably where the suicide bombing is coming from, because again, Taliban have also been injured, maybe even killed. So I think ISIS-K and Taliban, they're having their back and forth, and that's causing a lot of problems because you have a lot of Afghan citizens that are caught in the airport. They're trying to leave. Americans are caught up in it. Their interpreters are caught up in it. This is a whole big mess that could have easily been avoided. Now, as far as ISIS and the Taliban being in Afghanistan, you're not going to be able to avoid that, because the deal that was made to leave in May by the Trump administration, that was made with the Taliban. It wasn't made with the Afghan government necessarily. I mean, maybe the Afghan government were involved, but ultimately it was the Taliban who the deal was done with. So the U.S. military knew that the Afghan military was not going to be able to, defend themselves against the Taliban. They knew that when they left, the Taliban would take over. However, the way that we left created a bunch of problems, logistic nightmares. You're trying to evacuate people, and now you're kind of at the end of the gun. You kind of like staring down the barrel of a shotgun, and the Taliban have the shotgun. The Taliban are saying, hey, you said you were going to leave in May. You didn't do it. You want to try to do this symbolic thing of 9/11, September 11th. We're not going to have that. So you say August 31st. Okay, well, check it out. Today's date is August 26th. You have until the 31st, until next Tuesday. You have until then to get everybody out. And if you don't want to get everybody out, there's going to be consequences. So you're dealing with the Taliban threatening you. You're dealing with ISIS threatening you. And you have Pakistan involved. Maybe even have China involved. You got a lot of different powers around the world that are involved. America didn't do right by not leaving when they said they were going to leave. And when they did leave, they didn't leave correctly. Soldiers are wrapped up in this whole thing. They don't really know what's going on. This whole thing is a big mess. But as I've said, this is still early information and things are going to change. Hopefully we don't have any more casualties. Hopefully we don't have any more of these suicide bombings at the airport. But I mean, how can that really be avoided? It was almost, like I said, predictable, because you're right there. It's a big target. ISIS is in the country. The Taliban are there. You got them warring against each other. Civilians be caught up in the mix. It's a nightmare. But as I close, I want to say this. I wonder what would happen if Trump were here and this was under his watch. How would the media cover it? Would they try to make excuses? I mean, it's so bad that the mainstream media have turned against Joe Biden. That's how you know it's bad, because the mainstream media did all of what they could to protect this man, to protect this basically dead man in the White House. They did whatever they could. He didn't even have to campaign. He was in his basement the whole time, barely able to talk, even without traveling at all. Somebody's tired. Tired from doing what? Tired from watching Andy Griffith on his couch in the basement all day? But see, they protected this man no matter what. All the attacks, all the legitimate campaigning against him, they protected him. Now they've turned their back. And I don't see how they're able to get that ship back in the water and get it back sailing. I mean, once you do all that protecting, once you've gone so above and beyond to help someone and then turn their back on them, how is that going to be reversed? Because it's obvious that you did it. It was clear you were one way 1 minute and a different way the next minute. So I don't really see Biden coming back from this. But unfortunately, if he is deposed for whatever the reason, 25th Amendment, if that's a word, however it happens, whenever it happens, who's going to be the successor? Is it going to be Kamala? Kamala would be no different, because ultimately, as I close, the fault of all these things that are happening right now in Afghanistan are the staffers, the generals, your millies, all these guys. That is a responsible party. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they're not leaders, they're not rulers, they are figureheads. They get told what to do by their staff. They get an itinerary every day and say, hey, you're going to be here, you're going to be here, you're going to say this, you're going to say that. When it comes time for a press conference, here are the journalists, here are their news organizations. You're going to call on these 10 people. Here's the question, here's the answer. There's no actual governing involved. There's no leadership involved. You are just an employee of the federal government. That's it, and that's all. That's why they hated Trump so much, because Trump was an actual leader. Love him or hate him, think he was incompetent, competent, it's irrelevant. The point is that he was a leader, and he actually led from the front, not leading from the back, or by being a useless, pointless figurehead controlled by the federales and the proverbial deep state. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? How do you feel about what's happening right now in Afghanistan with these suicide bombings? Who's to blame for that? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there will be no terror attacks in Afghanistan or anywhere in the Middle East if the U.S. were not involved in some kind of way. But at a certain point, we're talking about terror attacks on the airport. Now, how did the airport situation become what it is? Who created that demand to leave the country immediately? Who could have provided safe harbor for everyone but didn't do it, and is now trying to go back and fix at the 0 hour when time's a wasting? The deadline is August 31st, and you're trying to get out thousands of people, and you got suicide bombings happening at the very airport you're trying to get people into. How are you going to do this? This whole thing is a mess, and there's no one to blame but Biden and his administration, period. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.